And hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster tonight on from Quick Hits News, joined by Vecchio, who I'm going to pop up here in just a second. And you're looking at some pictures that happened earlier this evening, this Monday evening. The House impeachment managers, they delivered the one article of impeachment to the U.S. Senate. It is one article that accuses Donald Trump of incitement of insurrection related to the Capitol riot. Let's go ahead and bring in Ken. So Ken, I mean, I guess it's always the pageantry of this is always fairly interesting, I suppose. The House managers walk over and literally physically deliver this. What do you make of it?
I make of it that it's something with absolutely no substance connected to it. There is no violation of law, certainly no crimes or high crimes or misdemeanors rather. They're painting a picture of a series of actions by Donald Trump, largely rooted in his speech that he gave the day that the Capitol was attacked, to act as if it's somehow evidence that he incited those people to storm the Capitol building, when the evidence all points in the opposite direction. Specifically, and most saliently, by the man saying, "March peacefully to the Capitol building." He used the word peacefully. And he didn't say anything that where any logic, rationale, or common sense would lead one to believe that he actually orchestrated, conspired with, or even did something that encouraged people to break into the Capitol building. There's no nexus or connection to his words and what they did. He used regular, normal political rhetoric, something that's used thousands of times weekly by politicians all across the country. And then when you look at
does it matter that some of the people, and look, there have been dozens of interviews with people who stormed the Capitol, and several of them have said to media, "Oh yeah, we went here because Donald Trump told us to." Now, regardless of whether they, translated Donald Trump the way they should have or not, does that matter that they at least felt like Donald Trump was encouraging them to do this?
In criminal law, which the impeachment hearings are rooted in, it punishes the criminal mind and not the act. And it's the criminal mind of the actor, not a person on the other end. In other words, just because some people felt like Donald Trump encouraged them to go to the Capitol building doesn't mean that he actually did. Now, in this case, Donald Trump did say to people about going down to the Capitol. That's another big problem with this argument. It's not that he encouraged them in any way, shape, or form to break into the building or to cause destruction to property there. He didn't say anything that was remotely even connected to it. Now I'm going to.
Well, he did say we have to fight, but you could consider that to be political hyperbole.
I think that not only can we consider it to be political hyperbole, but it's clear that that's what his intentions were. But I want to circle back to his intentions again. So in order to prove a crime or something that's quasi-criminal, like the impeachment hearing, you have to, again, you have to seek to punish his mind, not what the actors actually did, the people who stormed the Capitol building. You have to look at him as an actor. And in his role as an actor, he merely said, "Let's go down to the Capitol building peacefully and fight, for our rights." There's literally nothing that any prosecutor or person in a prosecutor type position like these managers can point to in the plain meaning of those words that somehow is stretched to that you should storm the building. I can understand people saying, this is why I'm getting to intentions, that they felt that it was his intention to tell them to go to the Capitol building, because he did say that. But it's a big leap to say that what he meant by that was to bust into it. And by the way, only a handful of people out of, I don't know how many were there, a couple 100,000 that day, 100,000. Only a handful of people actually went into the Capitol building, something that clearly, by the evidence that has since come out, was due to, one, some people actually thought about it beforehand, really planned it out, and others who just did it spontaneously, which was most of the people.
Look, I get all those points. Fair to say, though, that in terms of what high crimes and misdemeanors are, I mean, the Senate and the House, for that matter, they get to define that themselves. I mean, we're not talking about criminal law here. We're talking about a political act, which is essentially what impeachment is. And there are some Republicans who think, look, we want to get rid of Donald Trump. We want to make sure he doesn't have a chance to run again. And this is, I mean, we've heard Mitt Romney. We've apparently, there are whispers that Mitch McConnell has told Republicans we need to find a way to make sure we bury this guy. Is there a way they can do that?
I don't see any path for them to do it legally. And the impeachment is probably the most serious vote that congressional leaders can make. Let's put it at least in the top couple. And for the congressmen and women and the House of Representatives to have voted for this nearly straight down political lines. And then for any U.S. senators, which most of them will be straight down political lines who vote for them, maybe there'll be a handful, a couple of Republicans that vote for it, to utilize this very serious procedure just to get rid of somebody because they don't like them politically is a massive abuse of that very, very severe sanction. That's number one. And it's inappropriate. There's no evidence backing. And I don't care that they get to, quote, define what a high crime and misdemeanor is. In their minds, they think they get to do that. They don't get to do that. You're correct. It's not criminal. And in practical terms, yes, they get to do it, but not in legal terms. There is ample precedent about what high crimes and misdemeanors is equated to, and it's rooted in criminal law and in other common law measures, and it amounts to pretty much the same thing as what a criminal crime, a criminal law would be, a felony or a misdemeanor. Now, all of that said, there's a procedural issue that's blocking them, and it's based in the Constitution of the United States of America. That says that impeachment is for presidents and other elected officials, not former elected officials. I know everybody's been talking about this, and everybody who's saying that it doesn't apply to him is correct. Because when you look at a piece of law and you're trying to define and interpret it, you first look at the plain meaning of the law. And the plain meaning of the law on its face is defining the people who can be impeached as individuals who are currently holding office. When the plain meaning of the law is confusing or vague, then you look at precedent. Well, there's no precedent to the contrary of that. The only precedent is directly stating what the Constitution says on its face, that it has to be a current sitting officer, in this case, a president. It's completely irrational to try to utilize this procedure at this point, and it's going to fail. There's very few things where I'll say in law that's going to come down to like a 99% scenario, but I think this is at a 99% scenario that's going to fail.
We're talking with Ken Del Vecchio. He's a legal expert. He's a lawyer, former judge, former prosecutor, defense attorney. He's done it all. He's written books about the law. And as will probably be obvious, Ken and I don't agree on most things. But we do agree on a couple of things. And you know what? As part of my pledge for 2021, I'm going to talk to people like Ken, people who I disagree with, and we're going to have conversations, civilized conversations, and air out our disagreements or figure out where we might agree. But I will agree with you, Ken. I don't think that the impeachment's going to work. And just as so many people, I think, forgot about the first impeachment of Donald Trump, I think there's an eagerness at this point to move on from this one, even before it starts. All right, I want to ask you about something that's going on in the U.S. Senate. Mitch McConnell has been holding out and trying to essentially filibuster. It's complicated, but when the Senate starts up a new session, they have to agree on what their rules are. And the Democrats want a certain set of rules in terms of, committee chairmanships and et cetera, et cetera. Mitch McConnell has been holding this up. He's been holding up the assignment of committee chairs because he wants an ironclad guarantee from the Democrats that they will not use the filibuster or they will not break up the filibuster. In other words, in order to bring something to a vote in the U.S. Senate, just for debate, you need 60 votes. It may be an up or down vote, but just to get it to that point, you need 60. And so a lot of people suggested, well, because it's a 50-50 split, there's no way, it's going to be very difficult to get anything through the Senate if you're always requiring 60 votes to move it forward. And a number of Democrats have said, okay, well, let's just do what McConnell has done with judges. And Harry Reid, the Democrat did before, and that you get rid of the filibuster for judicial nominees. And so, for example, we saw that Amy Coney Barrett was approved to the U.S. Supreme Court, confirmed by the Senate with a simple majority. She didn't get the 60. Ken, is it good politics for McConnell to be digging in now and essentially trying to gum up just the process here at the very beginning?
Well, it is a complicated process, and I want to say something along the lines of what you clearly made a point of just a moments ago. Is that yes, we don't agree on a lot of different things, and there are some things that we do. I think that we could probably agree on this, that with reference to the impeachment process is, regardless if it's Donald Trump or if it was some Democrat, under these circumstances, the last point I made, the procedural point, I would make the same argument for the Democrat that they couldn't impeach them. Same thing with this filibuster issue. This to me is something that has been misappropriated along party lines in both directions before. You mentioned that Harry Reid once made choices, and Mitch McConnell has made choices as the leaders of the Senate. It really means that the entirety of the Senate has made these choices in the past. And it politically, I do think it makes sense for what Mitch McConnell is doing, because he's trying to hold on to some kind of separation of powers where everything is not completely in the hands of the Democrats. So all Republicans have to be cheering for what he's doing. If a Democrat were doing the opposite, all Democrats would be cheering for what they're doing. So I do think it makes sense. Given the very grave problems that our country is facing right now, trying to separate the party lines, I do believe that keeping the filibuster in place is crucial to help save our democracy, our republic. Because right now, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of animosity, and to have one complete party rule through the executive branch and the legislative branch, where there's really no checks and balances without the filibuster, I think is very disconcerting. So not only do I think it makes good political sense, I think it makes good sense for the entirety of our country to have some checks and balances here, and to not pull what's known in politics as the nuclear option and get rid of the filibuster where everything is just by a simple majority vote. Because right now, I'd say probably 90 to 95% of what goes through the Senate is through this filibuster process where you need the 60 votes. And I do think it should remain that way.
It's interesting because there are two Democrats who agree with you and who agree with Mitch McConnell. Kyrsten Sinema, who is the new senator from Arizona, and Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. Both of them have come out and said that they do not support blowing up the filibuster. In other words, they support what McConnell's trying to do. The filibuster should remain intact. In other words, in order to move legislation, it should still require, obviously, it'll be the 50 Democrats plus at least 10 Republicans. And also interesting to this point, Joe Biden was asked, well, he wasn't asked, his spokesperson, Jen Psaki, was asked at the White House about his views on the filibuster. And in the past, Biden has said that he does support the filibuster and opposes blowing it up. And Jen Psaki said again today that his views have not changed. So it looks like Joe Biden is saying, for all of the pressure that Democrats are feeling, or at least putting on Joe Biden to let's get some quick victories. Let's get some things done really quickly. Biden, interestingly enough, seems to be saying, okay, let's give the Senate some time to breathe. Let's give Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer some time to figure this out. And maybe because Biden sort of recognizes the sort of the comedy of the Senate, and I say comity, not comedy, the comedy of the Senate that he has been familiar with in the past, maybe he's trying to see if there's some way for that to come back so that things that do get through the Senate do have this sort of bipartisan support, and it's not just one party jamming it down the other party's throats. Is that wise?
You know, quite honestly, I have to say that I don't feel like Biden would come out in opposition to it because A, of his personal precedent, and B, unlike a lot of conservative brethren, I'm not so sure that Biden is going to try to send us directly into communism. I feel like there's a good chance that Joe Biden is going to be his own person, and this is a guy who everybody uses as a negative, that he's a career politician. But as a career politician, he's been pretty much a moderate. as a Democrat, and he's been a guy that has shown that he works through the system. Now, I disagree with the great majority of what Joe Biden has stated that he plans to do, and I do have some considerable concern based on a whole litany of things that have occurred and some things he said during his run that we're going into totalitarianism, to socialism, if not communism, via the Democrats' hand. On the other side of it, though, I don't feel like an alarmist on it. I feel like there's a pretty damn good chance that Joe Biden is not going to go on the nuclear option with the filibuster, and that in the broader sense, which of what everybody's concerned about is, I don't think he's going to be so easily pushed around like a lot of people say. I've thought that he's lost a lot of his faculties, and many times he can't string two sentences together. But in reality, the guy still is totally with it at the end of the day, and he's an intelligent guy, and he's also a career man in politics that that has a big ego, and I think a big ego can help. I think a big ego is good. I like the big ego in Trump, and I'm hopeful that Joe Biden's big ego will lead him to use his big ego in the right way and make sound decisions. So in totality, which I think is the more important thing, they're not just a filibuster, but what the filibuster represents. It's stopping the country from going in a completely ludicrous and insane direction. And I think that Joe Biden is more likely, better than 50% chance, going to make things work out and try to bring us back into basic normality. And that's what I hope for.
Look, I think you're right, and I agree with you 100% on that. I think Biden is feeling like right now he's in no hurry, wants to let sort of calmer heads prevail, let things cool off a little bit, and see if the Senate can find a way to work this out. And plus, I mean, look, the Democrats, because they do have the majority with Kamala Harris breaking the 50-50 tie, I suppose if they really want to jam things down through the Republican throats, they can go through a budget reconciliation, which is a whole other process that would take us hours to explain. But basically, they can force certain votes with 51, pass certain things with 51, get it out of committee, pass it on the Senate floor with 51, open debate with 51, and not have to go through needing 60 anyway. That's a whole nother trick that they can rely on. But in any case.
But guess what, for everybody out there, you identified how they may not be able to do what they want to do, even without the filibuster. And that's because you have at least a couple Democrats who don't want to see things go nuclear. So if that really is the case, then they're going to break ranks on issues that they feel are key to holding our democracy together, and not just have knee-jerk reactions and vote down party lines. We saw what, 10, 11 Republicans in the House, which is a very small amount, by the way. It's like 7 or 8% of the Republicans in the House vote against Donald Trump for this crazy impeachment process. And we've seen Republicans otherwise even break ranks in the Senate. So I don't know if confidence the word. I'm hopeful and on the optimistic side that this will work its way out.
There is, Ken, I got to ask if there is, a guy by the name of Chris Bartley. He's a top commenter on HAPS. I'm going to put up what his comment says on screen. He says, "Hey, everyone, I am excited to hear from Kenneth Del Vecchio, the moniker of truth." Do you know this guy? Chris Scopehead, whatever his...
I do not, but assuming he's not being sarcastic, he's a brilliant man.
We got another person, a blunt Narwhal, who says, "Oh, lame, I want to yell at Ken." So, you're at least, you're batting 50-50. We got some pretty good...
I'm being fair and I'm being just here. So what's to yell at me about? Speak calmly to me.
I'm going to ask you, because I want to lean on your legal experience. So, and back to a little bit of the election, and I'll put up a picture of Rudy Giuliani now, because Dominion Voting Systems has filed a $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit against Rudy Giuliani. They filed 103 pages in court. They allege at least 50 different instances when Rudy Giuliani said, either in tweets or in public statements or on camera or in interviews or in quotes, that Dominion flipped votes from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. Ken, take us through what it takes to prove a defamation case, and what do you make of this one?
Okay. I think Dominion has about a 0% chance of succeeding in this case. Again, pulling things out politically, it is very difficult to succeed in a libel or slander case. And what people have to understand first are the elements of the tort. So it's a civil case. You have to prove, number one, that the statements that were made were false, that they were purposely false, that they were malicious, and that they were defamatory. Defamatory means that it would tend to hurt somebody's reputation, and that they're said to more than one person. Now, given that this is a company and not an individual, it's that much harder. Defamation of character in the written word is libel, and in the verbal word is slander. So let's take it backwards. Surely they can prove whatever it is that Rudy Giuliani said was said to more than one person. Millions, tens of millions of people heard what he said. Can they prove that it's defamatory? Well, if it was true that what he said was false, meaning if he did make false statements and it wasn't the case that these votes were flipped from Biden to Trump in the millions, then surely that would be defamatory. So they would be able to prove that element. But are they going to be able to prove the others? That it was malicious? I don't think they'd be able to prove that it's malicious. This is the attorney for the President of the United States. Even if he was just somebody who was a supporter of the President of the United States, what he was saying was in furtherance of the president's election contentions, not just the president's own contentions, but the contentions of tens of millions of people that he won the election. I don't think in any way they could show that this was malicious. Even more so, they have to prove that not only is it false, but purposefully false. I'd say that in any just court, any court that's even remotely trying to seek justice, there is 0% chance of proving that these were purposely false statements. Why? Because there's an extremely good argument that literally tens of millions of Americans at this point believe that there's overwhelming evidence that these Dominion machines were utilized to flip votes by the millions in favor of Joe Biden from Trump. I mean, this is evidence that's been presented to various state legislatures across the country. It's evidence that includes witness testimony. I mean, I'm just going to throw one out there that I remember watching myself in Michigan, who said that she was hired by a company that was a contractor for Dominion, that she worked with one of the Dominion owners, and that she watched them do multiple wrongful acts in flipping votes in favor of that she believed that flipped votes in favor of Trump, of Biden to Trump. You have all kinds of, and then there's multiple other eyewitnesses that Rudy.
So in other words, for Giuliani's sake, simply hearing that eyewitness or hearing that testimony, I mean, he, as long as in his own mind he believes that this was going on, it sounds like it's a very tough hill to climb. Would that change? And let's throw out Giuliani, but in a defamation case, let's suppose that somebody had been told by a very clear authority, look, here is the truth, here are the facts. And the person said, okay, I believe you, but I'm still going to go out and say what I'm going to say. Is that where defamation then could come in play? Absolutely.
If somebody knew that what they were saying was false, then they're making purposely false statements, and therefore they would be on the losing end of a defamation case, assuming that they could also show that what they said was malicious. It's not enough. If I know that you're not a professional baseball player and I say David Schuster's a professional baseball player, well, that's neither malicious nor is it going to hurt your reputation. So
unless you say that I play for the Mets. I know. I'm just keep going.
Let me make one other point. But there is a lot of evidence that tens of millions of Americans heard with their own ears and they saw with their own eyes. They saw things like that experts testifying that not only could the Dominion machines be connected to the internet, contrary to what was otherwise stated, but that in many cases they were connected to the internet. The experts testified that the Dominion machines could easily, by a flip of a switch, so to speak, in layman's terms, in another country, change votes. They saw that flash drives could be connected to them. And finally, there is a lot of data that's been presented that in Michigan alone, for example, that there were thousands of votes in one county that factually did flip from Biden to Trump because of the Dominion machines. And then there's all of this circumstantial evidence that overnight, like literally, votes went from hundreds of thousands to Joe Biden from Trump, where Trump just got a handful of votes. And people like Rudy Giuliani and tens of millions of Americans put that all together and say, not only am I skeptical about the machines, but I think that there's an extremely good chance that these machines were utilized in a wrongful manner to flip millions of votes from Biden to Trump. And it's very logical to draw that conclusion. And if Dominion were to go on trial with this, they may lose in reverse. So I don't know what's the basis of this. I mean, is anybody 100% positive about what happened? Well, I guess in certain instances, there's clear-cut factual evidence that votes did go from Biden to Trump. Did it go in the millions? I think that the evidence is pretty overwhelming, showing that there's a strong likelihood that it did, but I think it will take more evidence gathering to know anything for positive in either direction.
And I'll never forget, after the Florida recount, the New York Times spent something like, I don't know, a year and a half looking at the Florida vote and trying to figure out, okay, exactly how did Florida go? And it took them literally 18 months of pouring through all the records in Florida and having teams of reporters down there. And that was well after Al Gore had conceded the 2000 election. I mean, and maybe that's sort of where we're heading. It's going to take some, credible journalists and people to go through and say, okay, here's what happened, here's what didn't happen.
Can I actually ask you a question real quickly?
Sure.
Okay. So these are numbers that Donald Trump was reading in his speech. And these are on the day that the Capitol was unfortunately wrongfully broken into by that mob of people who, by the way, I think were total idiots for doing that. It was a totally wrong move for them to do that. But these are numbers that Donald Trump was reading, that Donald Trump got from hearings that I understand he got them from hearings that were in front of state legislatures and from media reports, and that I've known nothing that contradicts these numbers. So, for example, Pennsylvania, 14,000 people voted for out of state, 8,000 dead people voted, 10,000 illegally counted votes that were received after Election Day, 60,000 ballots received before they were ever mailed, 25,000 ballots requested by nursing homes in single batch, 400,000 ballots that were mailed in that appeared after Election Day. You could do this through every state. I'll just do one more. Georgia, 10,000 ballots, names and dates of birth from dead people, 4,000 ballots from individuals who are not on voter rolls, 2,500 votes of names and dates that were people were incarcerated, 18,000 using vacant addresses, 88,000 ballots, the registrations illegally backdated, 66,000 voters under the legal voting age, and finally 15,000 voters who moved out of state before the November 3rd election. Every one of the swing states has these similar types of numbers. My question is there any evidence out there that contradicts these numbers? I mean, that factually says that these numbers aren't true, because I've heard all of these similar type numbers, if not exactly similar numbers, at testimony in front of all these different state legislatures. And I haven't heard the secretaries of state or the people who are in control of these contradicting these numbers. And if this is the case, then it clearly shows that there were there were hundreds of thousands of illegal votes that clearly could have turned the election the other way, because each of these states was decided by much lower margins.
Well, look, I get your point, and the numbers certainly do sound incriminating, but part of, for example, the conversation that the Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger had with Donald Trump, the infamous phone call that a lot of people had a problem with, Raffensperger said, Mr. President, the numbers, and I believe that the numbers, some of them that you were just citing about Georgia, he said, your numbers are wrong. You don't have the right set of numbers. You don't have the right numbers in the right columns. Now,
but I've never heard them come up with any different numbers than these numbers. Where are these numbers? They seem to be shrouded in like secrecy, and that's what I think is most alarming to people. I don't understand why there isn't some blue ribbon panel put together like Ted Cruz was discussing. Even after the fact now, it's almost as important right now, because why don't Democrats just as much as Republicans want all this out there and have like this panel, like a bipartisan panel to investigate this? Because I think it would ease everybody's mind.
I see your point. And look, if it were up to me, I mean, one of the things that I was saying in December is that if the Democrats were smart, they should call on the Georgia Secretary of State, the Michigan Secretary of State, do an hour-long PowerPoint presentation and go through number by number. Here's the claim, here's the actual count. And whether people can understand it or not, at least put it out there and be transparent about here are the actual numbers that we have, and here's why the claims are wrong. I think that would have helped a lot of people, and I still wish that somebody at some point is going to do that. But Ken, before we wrap it up, I got to ask you, Tom Brady, 43 years old, he's the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are headed to the Super Bowl, the 55th Super Bowl. He's going to square off against the Kansas City Chiefs. 25-year-old Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback for the Chiefs. Ken, I've been following football for a long time. I never played football, but I've been asking this of a lot of my friends who have played football and coached football, and you've done both, and your son plays football. What is it about Tom Brady? What is it, the Q factor? Is it the system? What is it that makes him so successful for so many years? And I feel like it can't possibly be just his skills. There got to be something else, something about the way he reads things, the way he inspires his players. I wonder if you can explain it.
Number one, confidence. True confidence is what I believe separates a person apart in every battlefield sport and in every battlefield occupation in life. So myself as somebody who at one point I was in the top 5 in the country for real in bench press in my weight class. Those were drug-free competitions. When the people with steroids got involved, I was still in the top 15. And if you look at me, you'd say, okay, the guy's a pretty muscular, well-built guy, but you'd have no idea that I was bench pressing 385 pounds and decline bench pressing 450 pounds while weighing 165 pounds. It comes from the mind as much as it does the body. And Tom Brady exudes confidence at the highest level. Clearly, he's an amazing athlete. I mean, fantastic at the highest level. Is he a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes? Is he a better quarterback than one of 10 other quarterbacks out there right now that are phenomenally talented? They're probably all roughly the same. I mean, in terms of just pure athleticism. But what makes this guy such a winner? I think we can settle the score between the Bill Belichick and Tom Brady argument. I've always said it's Tom Brady that's really the true ultimate leader there, and that you could take, not that Bill Belichick isn't a good coach, he is, but you could take thousands. I could coach the Patriots those years and probably have brought them to the Super Bowl, quite honestly. And so could you, even as somebody who you said didn't play football because you know enough about it, right? So, but to replace Tom Brady, we see what the difference is. He's gone to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and taking to the Super Bowl. I mean, the guy has an amazing football IQ, and he's got tons of confidence, and he's just a leader.
Well said. And that's, it's something that's similar to what I've heard, in that, when you're in that huddle and you look up and there's Tom Brady, and he's, taking you to 9 Super Bowls previously, and he's won so many games through comeback, and he says, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. I imagine every player on that offense and every player on that sidelines, they're like, yeah, we believe in this guy. And just that sort of level of a confidence spread among the team and then multiplied and amplified by everybody on the field. Maybe that's it. In any case, Ken, always a pleasure talking.
One final point on that.
Yeah.
I do want to say this, that while wrestling is a solo sport, football is the ultimate team sport, and it does take a team of what amounts to 25 starters, 11 on defense, 11 on offense, and then you got special teams with the kicker, punter, and kick/punt returner to really take a team to a Super Bowl. So while Tom Brady's the leader, you do have to have amazing players around them.
Yeah. And you know what? Tom Brady was pretty good as Michigan's quarterback back in the day, but he wasn't a superstar. I think people back at Michigan, if they would have said, oh, the guy who's going to be the greatest of all time in the National Football League, they would have said Brian Griese, Chad Henne. They wouldn't have said Tom Brady, but it just goes to show that there's that Q factor. You get into the NFL and right place, right time, you get a chance to blossom, and what an amazing career. Anyway, Ken, always a pleasure talking with you. Thanks for doing this, talking football, talking the law, talking impeachment. Ken, we'll do this again next Monday night. Have a great week, my friend. Take care.
You too.
All right, and everybody on Haps, thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.